there were moments where nothing else mattered except for, God, what is it that you want out of my life? Like, what's the lesson? What's the healing lesson? What's the transformational lesson? And one thing that this has taught me is how to be alone. This has taught me how to heal in private.
Today on M&B Media TV, we have author and coach Dayo Greenway.
Yes.
How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you on.
Absolutely.
So we're here to talk about your new book entitled Oh Shunt.
Yes.
Yes. So let's jump right in and start with the title Oh Shunt. What does that title personally mean to you?
Yeah, so it's definitely a play on words. Oh Shunt is a manifestation of me having to get a brain shunt. And so the O Shunt part is just because it kind of blindsided me.
Right.
And so, when we talk about a play on words, we usually would say something
Right,
different.
right,
We're
right,
like,
right.
oh,
Yeah.
oh Shunt. It just
like
speaks to
it.
being blindsided by
like it.
a pivot in my life.
Okay. Wow. So explain for people who don't know what a shunt is.
So back in March, I had a brain shunt put in, and what a shunt is, what I learned was that I had what they call idiopathic intracranial hypertension, and so for most of us, all of us, we have fluid that goes through our spine, it travels through to our brain, and then it releases. And that's just a natural proclivity of our bodies. For me, mine was traveling through my spine and going into my brain, and then it was not releasing.
Wow.
And so I started to experience all of these side effects from having very high intracranial or very high intracranial pressure. Normal pressures are about 6 to 12, 20 considered high. When we found out about my diagnosis, my pressures were at 57.
Wow.
And so what the shunt does is it allowed them to go in and put this mechanism in my brain, in the ventricle parts, and it causes the extra fluid that was there to actually release. So it's forcing the release.
So it's like a clog.
Yeah, and I don't know if we necessarily say that it was clogged up, but it is the shunt itself is in the right ventricle of my brain, and then there's tubing that goes down through my neck and down to my abdomen that allows the fluid that wasn't previously releasing on its own, which it should do naturally. The shunt is forcing it to release down through the tube and down into my abdomen, which is really allowing me to have normalcy in my life now.
Wow. So what were some of the effects of it? Like that you knew something wasn't right?
Yeah, so I usually have headaches, and I always thought, I'm a person who is prone to migraine headaches.
Gotcha.
And I just felt like, when I would have headaches, that's what it was. It was just me feeling migraines like I normally would. But on one particular day, it was a different kind of headache for me. And, we normalize some pain. We normalize some diagnoses and some things that we just learned to live with. I had learned to live with migraines. So having a migraine doesn't necessarily shock me. The shock factor was the type of pain. It was all in my left side when I felt it that particular day. And then it caused me to have floaters. So it changed my vision. And it felt scary. It felt like it was something different. And so that's what caused me to start making phone calls and call my doctor and my eye doctor and say, hey, something's wrong. My vision has changed. I got this headache that feels different.
Right.
What's next? And from there, we just kind of went on.
Wow. Take us back to that moment where you learned you needed surgery. What was that like for you?
Very emotional, very emotional. And I say very emotional. And I know that, sometimes hearing that you have to have surgery for everybody is not emotional. It doesn't feel traumatic. But for me, it felt like a very traumatic moment. It was very emotional. It felt like a gut punch, like a blow to my life.
Wow.
And I talk about in chapter 1 of my book, I talk about how life came from my head. Like I had a lot of things going on in my life, and I was dealing with heart issues, and I was working through some heart things. And so I'm used to life coming from my heart, right? But this time life came from my head, and that was different. And so finding out that I had to have surgery, like it came from me physically. Normally I'm a healthy person, right? And so to know that something was happening in my body physically that I did not have control over, the moment of learning that I had to have surgery. So the first moment was after my second spinal tap. And by the time I got into my second spinal tap, and that's where the spinal tap is what they would use to check the pressures, to see how my pressure, if it was coming down, if it was increasing. But by the time I did my second spinal tap, I had been on a regimen of medication for maybe 3 or 4 months. And so my prayer and my hope was that all of the medication had worked. It was life-altering medication, and so it felt sacrificial for me to be on life-altering medication that was changing what I could do with my days, like, days of just feeling like I wasn't even here sometimes, just in a daze. And so when I got to my second spinal tap, my faith said, you're going to be okay. And all of the sacrifices that you have made and taking this medicine and going along with the side effects and all of those things is going to pay off. And when they check your numbers this time, is going to be lower, and you're not going to need surgery. So that's what made it feel like a gut punch for me. And that's what made it feel emotional, because it became this conversation between me and God, like, for real? This what we doing? Surgery? Brain surgery? So it was a very emotional and traumatic moment for me.
Got you. I was going to ask you, what did you find the courage to go through that? That's a lot. You said it, your faith.
Yeah. My faith is everything.
Yeah.
My covenant and relationship with God is everything. And I knew that He was a part of the journey. But I think sometimes we expect God to answer our prayers. Even when it comes to healing, we expect Him to answer those prayers in a certain way. And so my conversation with Him as I went through the medication journey was, God, do it this way. Do it this way in such a way that when I go back, for me, that would have felt like healing. When I go back, they're going to say your numbers are low, the medicine worked. And then I could have celebrated my healing in that moment. But that's why this was also a faith transformation journey for me. Because what happens when God doesn't do it the way that you expect Him to? What happens when healing comes in those ways that we don't necessarily want to, those roads we don't necessarily want to travel
You want it immediately.
down. Yeah, I wanted Him to do it through the medication. And He was saying, no, daughter, we're going to do it this way. And you're going to have this shunt.
Wow. You talk about your emotions and going through that. What was the shock of your family, though?
Yeah, so the dynamics of my family, my kids, first of all, I have 3 kids and a goddaughter that I absolutely love them to life. And we're very, very close-knitted. And so my kids, the dynamics is such that my kids had already lost, my daughter had just lost her father a couple years ago to ALS. And so us as a family dealing with the loss of a parent. Years before that, my son lost his father. And so we had learned what it meant to grieve. We had learned what it meant to grieve in a healthy space, to sit with our emotions, to deal with things face on. We understood that, we cannot control what God allows. He's sovereign. And so He allows things even though we don't want them to happen. But when they found out about this surgery, quite naturally, my daughter the first thing that she asked the doctor was, am I going to lose my mommy? Like, am I going to lose my mommy? And that for me was one of the most emotional times, to hear her carry the weight of, I'm down to one parent. What happens if I lose the last one? And so I think as a family, though, my kids were absolutely amazing. Because we all have grown up on our faith.
Wow.
And so, I've taught them to trust God, to believe God, to know how to pray on their own. And that's exactly what they did. We rallied around our faith together as a family.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You just had this surgery 6 months
I
ago.
did. I did.
6 months ago. And you hit the ground running again.
I did. So I don't know, like I wouldn't say I absolutely hit the ground running.
Okay.
It was hard. It was hard because I am a person who does and go. I'm a life coach. I'm an author.
Right,
I
right.
spend time, even as I was going through the process of the medication journey and the surgery, I was right in the middle of a book collaboration, getting ready to write. We were finishing up writing A Silver Piece of Change and getting ready to release that. And so I can remember a month coming out of the surgery, I had to do a photo shoot with them and those ladies, and they had no idea what was going on. They knew that I was experiencing a medical challenge, but I didn't want to weigh them down with the heaviness of brain surgery because I didn't want them to think that it would compromise them being able to share their story and what they were trying to do in that project. And so they didn't know. But I can remember like a month after surgery, having to do that photo shoot with them. And barely, I told the photographer, I said, lean me up against a pole because I'm not sure that I can stand.
Can stand up.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I can stand. And if you go back and look at those pictures, I'm literally leaning up against a pole with a wig on because, my head was freshly cut and bald on the right side of my head. So I kind of hit the ground running, but the wisdom of knowing when it was time to rest and when it was time to heal and when it was time to just spend time in recovery mode. So,
Wow. I know life sometimes when you have everything, you can't see the blessings and the importance of everything. But when you go through something, it seems like everything, like, wow, becomes important to you.
Yeah. I think I don't, everything becomes important. But again, I think wisdom helps us to understand and allow those things that we really need to prioritize to come to the top. And so for me, going through this journey, there was a time where nothing mattered. Like, yeah, you feel like you have everything and everything means something. There were moments where nothing else mattered except for, God, what is it that you want out of my life? Like, what's the lesson? What's the healing lesson? What's the transformational lesson? And one thing that this has taught me is how to be alone. This has taught me how to heal in private, how to hurt in private, how to share my story and go home and still be in private.
Wow.
And so I think one of the things that really, really came to surface in terms of prioritizing what matters the most was I matter.
Yeah.
I matter. My healing matters.
Right.
My life matters. And what God wants from me matters. If I'm really transparent, when I first found out I had to have surgery, things like brain surgery, it's not like, some surgeries that you have that you pretty much know, all right, I'm gonna knock this out, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna recover.
Outpatient.
No, this one, it wasn't no outpatient type thing. This one was, I had to think of my mortality. Like, what happens if I don't come out? What happens if they hit the wrong part in my head and I'm not the same person when I come out of this? And so, there were just a lot of thoughts, a lot of things that I had to deal with, a lot of introspective moments that I had to deal with and processing through the need to have this surgery and to recover the right way.
Wow.
And I thought there was a time when I thought, God, that, this is it for me. Like, this is it. My purpose stops here. Like, it stops here. This is God's way of saying, I'm done with you. And
so you felt that way?
I absolutely felt that way. It was a very private struggle. Just feeling like my purpose was over. I mean, because it was like we all got to go some way. It's all gonna end for us at some point.
Right.
So you start to deal with those dark thoughts, the thoughts of, is this my time? And even though, I felt like this was a life-saving, at some point I came to terms with, okay, God is doing this to save my life and not take my life. I still thought, will I be the same, and will my purpose matter after this? So
Amazing.
yeah, I just, a lot of things that you deal with in moments like this.
Well, I want to say you don't look like what you've been through.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Wow.
so much. And I mean, I'm so grateful to God. It's definitely God's
For sure.
favor. And, when I tell people, when people are finding out now about the brain surgery, you literally see them do the math in their head. Like, wait,
Yeah, 6 months ago.
6 months, you was here, you were there, you were doing, because I was still showing up.
Right.
And I'm not saying that that's always a good thing to show up, because sometimes we need to know when to sit down. But I was still showing up in such a way that I didn't look like what I was going through. And I'm grateful to God for that. The flip side to that is, sometimes when we show up and continue to show up, people assume that you're okay.
That's right.
And when you show up and people see what appears to be the normal you, they keep pulling, they keep pulling, they keep pulling, they keep pulling, and I keep giving and I keep giving. And so I had this moment through this process where I was empty, because I decided, I wasn't on Facebook telling everybody, hey, I gotta have, brain surgery. It was a very small group of people who knew: my kids, my mom, my dad, my sisters, and my little close friends, my close-knit group of friends. So when you show up, people think, oh yeah, that's Coach. Let me get what I need from her.
Yeah.
Let me get what I need from her. Let me call her and tell her what I need. And the women, I was working with 8 women telling their stories and carrying their weight as well. They were supposed to pull from me, right? Because I was showing up as their coach. So there is a good thing about showing up and not looking like what you're going through and not looking like what you've been through. But then there's also that aspect that says, when you show up that way, people expect they expect to get something from you. And there were times I just had nothing to give, because I was, even if it was just because of the medication, I was tired. I was tired and I was drained. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So it taught you to be alone, how to be alone, and to pull back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know when to shut it down.
Absolutely. And I think those are those boundaries that we don't often.
I like that, boundaries.
Yeah, we don't often operate in a space of boundaries. It taught me how to say, I am not well today. Yeah, I am not well.
And it's okay.
And it's okay that I'm not well. It's okay that I need today to rest. I talk about that in one of the chapters in the book, where I just had this day in my recovery where I shut down. And my family was like, oh God, what's happening? She ain't getting up. She ain't done therapy. She not doing anything. We need to do an intervention. But no, it's okay. It was okay for me to have a day where I just sit in what I needed to sit in, where I felt what I needed to feel, where I, had the conversations with God that I need to have. And I don't owe anybody explanations for that. I don't owe anybody, my recovery didn't have to look like what anybody thought that it needed to look like. It was just me and God.
It's amazing. Amazing. Your book, Shunt, is deeply personal. What do you hope the readers will take away from your story?
Yeah, that's a good one. So let me tell you what I hope the readers don't do first. I struggled with telling this story. And I know that sounds weird because I am a writer. Okay. And I have not struggled before with telling personal stories. I've written pain stories. I've written about some stuff that's happened in my life, and I typically don't struggle with doing it. This one I struggled with, just because it felt like it was a me and God journey. Right, it felt like it was a me and God thing, and I was trusting Him every step of the way, and I was keeping parts of it, a whole lot of it, just to myself, and working through it with Him. And so when I had the mandate, when God gave me the mandate to write the book, my fear was that people would read it just for the juicy details, because it was a moment that, was kept private. It would be, let me pick it up and see what was happening. Let me see, let me understand. And that's okay. Like, I can't keep everybody from, reading it for the juicy behind the scene details. So I hope that it's not just that to the readers. I yielded to the mandate And I yielded to God when it came to telling this story because it was a moment for me to live what I preach,
Gotcha.
live what I
Yeah.
teach, live what I coach. And I always tell my clients, walking in your purpose means that you must prepare for the pivotal moments of change. I cannot teach pivoting without learning to pivot and without being able to tell the story of what happens with an unplanned pivot. Right. And so I hope that the readers don't get stuck in the juicy details,
Right.
in the emotion of it. I hope that they really see the lessons at the end of the book, which is the transformation part. What do you do when life hits you with an unplanned pivot? How do you pivot? How do you walk through the faith transformation part? Like, how do you ask God the hard questions and still allow your faith to move to a greater place, even though there are moments where you're angry with God? Like, how do you build faith when you're angry with God? And then after an unplanned pivot, how do you then take life and say, and do what God is mandating me to do? Now write about it. There's gonna be an assignment after the unplanned pivot. How do you push in the purpose assignment after the
Wow.
unplanned pivot? I hope that the readers take those lessons from the book as they read through it and not just, oh my God, something happened, let me read about it. So that's my hope, that's my prayer.
Amazing. Amazing. As we close out this conversation, now that you've lived through such a powerful chapter of your life, what's the next for you, both personally and creatively? What's next for Coach Dayo?
I just told somebody the other day, I'm not writing a thing for a little while. I don't know.
Book tour.
Yeah, I may do a book tour. I am open to whatever God wants me to do with this journey, with this story. And I'm growing to become open because this story, like I said, is one of the hardest stories for me to tell. And so there's a part of me that's like, no, God, don't make me do that. I don't wrote the story. Now leave me alone about it, right? I don't want to keep on talking about it. So, but I'm open to whatever He says is next. Wherever He wants to take the lessons of this story, I'm open to going there. But I don't know that I've really thought about it. I think some downtime is definitely from a personal standpoint. I need some downtime and I plan to take some downtime. And then from a creative standpoint, I'm sure as I go into next year that I will get a download and I will hear from God about what's next and I will follow and be obedient. I just don't know what that is yet.
Got you. Got you. You're an amazing person, and
Thank you for saying
man,
that.
powerful testimony.
Thank
Powerful
you. Thank
testimony.
you.
We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Again, it's
you.
been a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.